Chapter 1421. Life was just like that. One could never get everything they wanted. The warm sea wind blew, and Avery coughed a few times. Mr. Fordham, what agreement did you have with Mr. Rivera? Olivia didn't want to talk about her problems anymore. So, she changed the subject. He agreed to treat me when I offered him research funds and the rights to some of my medical products. As you know, research takes a lot of money. He's a good researcher, but he's no businessman. That's true. The stuff he gave Toxic Hive allowed them to make a name for themselves. He would make a fortune if he applied for patents and released his products to the market. What about you? What are you going to do? Drag it out for as long as possible. I don't want to hurt Mr. Rivera's feelings, but I don't want to become a cyborg either. Have you gotten back with Ethan? I heard that you two had a very serious falling out back then. Olivia smiled bitterly. That's true. It's just a relationship I can't get away from. Life is short. As long as you're happy, nothing else really matters. It's great that you're still alive. You've changed a lot, Mr. Fordham. You've changed a lot, too, Olivia. We're acquaintances. If there's anything I can help with, just let me know. Without your help back then, I would never have found my sister's body. That was just a simple favor. Olivia nodded. Does your family know that you're receiving treatment here, Mr. Fordham? She knew how Lewis was. His labs are more important than anything. He would never let any outsider know about them. Avery shook his head. No, I don't want them to worry. But I've recovered a lot since I left home. Olivia looked at the clouds in the sky. Things will get better. Lewis quickly came back with the answer. He found the IP address of the computer the email was sent from. It was from an illegal internet cafe in a small country. There were no cameras there, so the identity of the sender couldn't be confirmed. The mastermind was as cautious as ever and didn't slip up. But Olivia's mood improved. She had just recovered her identity, and the enemy came knocking on her door right away. It seemed like she wanted Olivia dead as soon as possible. If Olivia escaped from Lewis's lab, the mastermind was sure to have other plans to get rid of her. Olivia wasn't afraid of her. Rather, she was afraid that the mastermind wouldn't come out of hiding. Lewis wasn't happy with the results of the investigation. He broke the keyboard on the spot. He wanted to find the mastermind even more desperately than Olivia. If he managed to exact revenge for Olivia, she would be free to proceed with the modification plan with him. Mr. Rivera, calm down. We will definitely get to the bottom of this. You're close with Miss Rosa, right? Helen had a hand in getting her and Marina swapped. She might even know who her parents were. She could also be linked to the people trying to kill her. If the mastermind wasn't linked to the Toxic Hive, she wouldn't know Olivia's relationship with Lewis. The mastermind was obsessed with trying to kill her. Olivia couldn't think of anyone who had such a massive grudge against her unless it was linked to her biological family. Olivia started to look into Helen. She saw Helen once when Chris died. Then, she vanished into thin air. Even Colin tried to contact Helen for Olivia but to no avail. You mean Helen? Yeah, you have a transactional relationship with Toxic Hive. You should have seen her before, right? Lewis nodded. I saw her many years ago. But recently, someone new came to visit me, not her. As expected, Helen stopped appearing after Chris died. This lead had gone cold. Other than Helen, it could only be the boss of the Toxic Hive. But even Colin hadn't seen the boss of Toxic Hive before. He didn't even know if the boss was a man or woman, nor the boss's age. By the way, it's time to hand over some drugs. That woman will come tonight to pick them up. Is she your enemy? No, but I'm curious. Who took over for Miss Rosa? Chapter 1422. Olivia acted as Lewis's assistant like before. She had been good at doing these things in the past. She familiarized herself with the tasks very quickly. Lewis was very satisfied with her work. You're so quick-witted, unlike the other fools. Olivia looked at the mechanical arms in a glass display case. They were more advanced than the limbs she installed for Marina. Lewis was so crazy that he even made the skin on these arms perfect. They were exactly the same as human skin and even looked smoother than most people's skin. Lewis was happy to see that she was staring at a mechanical arm. Look, this is the newly upgraded version. You can barely tell it's a mechanical arm from the outside. The fingers are even more nimble than a human's. Don't worry, Elise. I'll use all the best parts for you. The mention of the modification made her heart sink. Mr. Rivera, it's not that I don't trust you. I just want to wait for a little while longer. It would cause you trouble if the procedures don't go well. Your worries are justified. Don't worry. Someone has already tried it out for you 2 years ago. I've installed mechanical arms and legs for her. I'm still observing the stats. Arms and legs. Who was so bold? It's the woman that's going to come and pick up the drugs. You can see her tonight. Since you're here, we can perform maintenance for her. The tendons on all her limbs were severed. Even the bones were broken. She begged me to help her out. So, I tested out the parts on her for you. Thanks to her, I got a lot of new data. I was able to improve and upgrade the parts. Severed tendons. Olivia thought about someone. Could it be Mr. Rivera? When is the appointment? 8 p.m. Louis walked forward nonchalantly. Come here, Elise. Look at this leg. Your legs look nice. That's why I made a lot of improvements. I wanted to make it the same as your legs. Touch it and tell me what you think. Olivia touched it, and it felt slightly cold. The lifelike mechanical arms that Louis made were already very detailed. It wasn't too hard. The truly difficult parts were the organs. There were a lot of nerves, organs, and muscles in the human body. They were like the intricate gears underneath the surface of a watch. Olivia saw a lifelike mechanical heart that was beating quietly inside a container. Louis introduced it passionately. Humans are too fragile. They are slower, weaker, and have plenty of weaknesses. Extreme blood loss, organ damage, and heart failure were all fatal weaknesses. This mechanical heart would be fine even if someone shot it. It is made with a special material that cannot be penetrated by a bullet. If we equip the weak human body from the inside to the outside, humans will become the most powerful beings on the planet. Not only will we have the best defense, best minds, and longevity. You'll be the first person to achieve that greatness. Aren't you excited? Olivia didn't know if a mechanical heart could learn to love again. She didn't look happy at all. Mr. Rivera, it's getting late. You must be hungry. Why don't we get something to eat? Why not? I'll tell you more about my vision. The night fell. The island looked gentle and romantic under the moonlight. The ground shone slightly under the moonlight. Olivia stood on the second floor of the castle to look at the boat docked near the coast. Her mask glimmered under the light. A person wearing a black cloak walked up the steps in the night. She arrived. Olivia got permission from Louis to receive the guest personally. The castle's doors were open. A woman stood there with a silver mask. The guest took off her hat. An unforgettable face appeared before Olivia. She clenched her fists. It was her, Leah Miller. Chapter 1423. Back then, after Olivia's incident, Ethan broke his own sister's limbs to avenge Olivia. He wanted to keep Leah trapped for life. After all, a person who had lost all 4 limbs wouldn't be able to cause trouble. But Ethan seemed to have underestimated Leah's determination. She had experienced inhumane torture since she was young, so she was mentally far stronger than the common person. She had only lost her limbs, so of course, she wouldn't give up. Ethan and Janice thought that Leah would turn over a new leaf, but they were unaware that she was gathering strength as she awaited the right time. Ethan had been too busy in the past few years, and Leah was overseas. So, if Janice had hidden and defended Leah on purpose, Ethan wouldn't have noticed it. When Olivia saw Leah, she subconsciously touched her wrist. Back then, Ethan had injured her wrist because of Leah. Now, Olivia felt as if her wrist was still hurting even though her injuries had healed, and there weren't even any scars in sight. Olivia knew that the bullet hadn't only hit her wrist, but it had also gone straight through her heart. Even now, it was still embedded in her heart. Who are you? Leah's voice was still rough. Olivia changed her voice and said, I am Mr. Rivera's assistant. He has been waiting for a long time. Leah wondered if she was seeing things, but she felt as if the masked woman in the white coat in front of her had a familiar silhouette. Reality had proven that regardless of love or hate, she would still be able to recognize that person in a dense crowd. But Leia soon dismissed that thought. How could Olivia have anything to do with Louis? Olivia couldn't possibly be here. Thank you. Leia quietly followed Olivia, unaware of Olivia's raging hatred. Various past events came to Olivia's mind. She thought of Ethan's cruel gaze, the Fordham family going bankrupt, Jeff's accident, Jody's death, her own kidnapping, and the time when Snowball fell off the roof and died right in front of her. Olivia had never forgotten any of those incidents, not even for a day. The culprit was right behind her, and she never once gave up on the idea of killing Leia. After so many years, she finally had this opportune chance. She wanted to kill Leia so badly. The thought screamed its presence in Olivia's mind, and her blood was boiling. Louis's voice rang out. "You're here." It was only then that Olivia came to her senses. She shouldn't do anything for now. At the very least, she couldn't do it with Louis around. Leia was an important test subject of his, so if she died, he wouldn't be able to collect data. Olivia knew that she couldn't provoke Louis. "Mr. Rivera." Leia hastily stepped forward. "This is my assistant, Elise. You've probably met her already. From now on, she'll be conducting your checkups." Louis had an indifferent look on his face as he spoke coldly. "I see." She looked down at Olivia's hand, which was holding a notebook. Olivia's wrist was smooth and fair, and there were no scars in sight. It was only then that Leia relaxed. She was just overthinking it. This woman wasn't Olivia. Olivia ordered coldly, "Lie down. I'm going to examine you." Leia was about to lie down when her phone rang. Glancing at the phone number, Leia said, "Sorry, I have a call to answer." "Go ahead." Her mind buzzed for a moment. Why was Avery here? Chapter 1424. When Leia spotted Avery, she subconsciously tried to escape, but Avery had already noticed her. "Begonia." The word drifted toward Leia in the night breeze. The woman's voice on the other end of the line sounded a little panicky. "Did someone approach you? Who are you with right now? I'll contact you later." Leia hung up and quickly ran away. She was given mechanical legs, so she ran faster than a normal human. Avery wasn't feeling well, so he only ran after Leia for a little while before slumping onto the floor, panting. Unexpectedly, Leia turned back and ran back to him. She looked at him anxiously. "Are you okay?" She had noticed him leaning against the flower bed, so she thought that something happened to him. Avery gripped her wrist. "Got you, Begonia." Begonia was Leia's alias in Peace's embrace. Avery's voice was as gentle as always, and Leia had mixed feelings about that. No one knew this, but Avery was the only salvation she had in her life. Back then, when she ran away from the poor and desolate village, she encountered Avery. He was the one who brought her back to Peace's embrace for proper education. He had allowed her to undergo surgery to recover, and he had taught her many things. Later on, she followed Toxic Hive as it broke away from Peace's embrace, but she had never forgotten him. He had given her a new life when she was at her worst moments. "What exactly are you trying to do?" Avery was gasping for breath, but the smile remained on his face. "Can we talk?" She couldn't reject him. Avery held onto the flower bed for support as he got up, but he never let go of Leia's hand. He pulled Leia along with him as he walked toward his room. Under the glow of the streetlights, Leia looked down at their linked hands. In an instant, a blush tinted her cheeks, and her heart raced. She was holding Avery's hand. This was the first time Avery had held her hand and also the first time she entered his personal space. The room was simple and brightly lit, and it resembled Avery's gentle demeanor. After closing the door to make sure that Leia wouldn't run away, Avery let go of her and apologized. Then, he asked Leia to take a seat. "Do you still drink strawberry milk?" Leia's face turned redder. When he took her in back then, she had insisted on drinking strawberry milk every day. "You remembered." "Yes." Avery took a carton of strawberry yogurt from the fridge, shaking it. "I don't have milk with me. Will yogurt do?" Leia accepted it with both hands, and she felt her heart turning warm. "Thank you. Since you liked it in the past, I got used to the strawberry flavor as well. By the way, I forgot to ask, but have you been well these years?" Leia pursed her lips. "Actually, I'm not doing very well. If Avery kept an eye on her, he would have known that her biological brother had broken her limbs and grounded her. I've heard some things about you. Begonia, you're a good child. I don't understand why you chose to follow Toxic Hive instead of staying in Peace's embrace. Leia looked at his handsome face. To her, he was like a deity. I don't want to talk about the past too much. She found an excuse to avoid the question. Begonia, why did you do those things? Ethan is your brother, so why did you hurt your sister-in-law? Avery's gaze was gentle as always, but there was a hint of judgment in it. Leia could remain indifferent when faced with anyone but Avery. She panicked, for she didn't want to lie to him. I'm jealous of her. She had taken away all my brother's love. That's not it. Avery was sure of it. Leia suddenly remembered that the man in front of her wasn't as gentle as he seemed. He was the head of his family, and he was also a shrewd businessman. He saw through her disguises at a glance. He sounded like he was pleading with her, and Leia felt even more conflicted. Chapter 1425. Avery approached Leia. I still remember back when I just took you in. You were so skinny and small. Enough, Mr. Avery. This is a private matter, and I don't want to talk about it. Was it because you didn't want to talk about it, or you couldn't? Begonia, someone is giving you orders, right? Tell me, who is that person? For whose sake can you go so far that you would even sacrifice your brother's happiness and separate his family? Leia kept backing away from Avery. His eyes seemed to peer into the depths of her heart. She shoved Avery away. Before leaving, she said, I'm sorry, Mr. Avery. I'll repay your kindness with my whole life, but I cannot tell you anything about this matter. Avery looked in the direction she left. His gentle gaze clouded over. When Leia came to a deserted place, she dialed the number again. The woman's anxious voice rang out. Who was that man who talked to you just now? He's Lewis's assistant. Leia didn't tell the truth. Just an assistant. Who else did you think he could be? By the way, what was it that you wanted me to do? Figure out if Olivia is with Lewis. If so, kill her at all costs. Leia repeated softly, at all costs. Yes, this is the best chance. While she was speaking, Olivia's voice rang out in the distance. Begonia, how much longer are you going to take? Leia hung up again as she walked toward Olivia. She stood alone in the night, and the glow of the lamp illuminated her mask. Leia couldn't see Olivia's expression, but she was certain that Olivia was smiling. Olivia looked like a cunning fox as she stood there with a folder in her hands. Leia walked past Olivia, saying, You've changed a lot. Of course, she had changed a lot. She no longer had fear or panic in her gaze, only determination for the future. Now that Leia had learned about Olivia's identity, she wouldn't let Olivia examine her. She didn't forget that rainy night many years ago when she had almost injected Olivia with poison. I'm sorry, Mr. Rivera. Something urgent cropped up, so let's set the examination aside for now. We'll proceed with the transaction. Lewis didn't beat around the bush. He was just a little upset. Are you sure? My student rarely comes back. He had things to teach Olivia, after all. If the test subject wouldn't cooperate, how was he supposed to teach her? Leia understood what he meant by that. She didn't expect the woman she used to look down on had turned into Lewis's confidant. Lewis rarely acknowledged people. In the past, he had a prized student who ended up on the wrong path, and that became a lifelong shame for him. Since then, he never took in any students. Even Leia had once tried to approach him with that intention. After she had spent an afternoon with him, he waved his hand and told her to go home. What did Olivia do to get that privilege? Sorry, Mr. Rivera. Alright, you can come back after you've settled it. Then the medicine. Lewis tossed the keys to Olivia. She'll deal with you. Olivia wasn't just good at medicine, but she was also quite smart, especially in terms of settling accounts. Lewis had witnessed it before. Leia felt even more frustrated when she saw Lewis handing over such an important thing to Olivia. Your assistant looks quite young. Do you trust her so much, Mr. Rivera? Leia was a little upset. Lewis yawned. He had planned to go back and sleep. He didn't expect to hear Leia's words. Chapter 1426. Louis's words were like a slap to Leia's face. She meant nothing to him, and she wasn't even half as important as Olivia was. It was a huge shock to the arrogant Leia, but she didn't dare to act on it. She had no choice but to keep it in. I see. Come with me. Olivia turned around and walked ahead. In the long underground tunnel, Olivia spoke up. I know that you want to kill me. I also know that you want to get revenge on me. They were well aware of each other's intentions, and they both knew that they wouldn't do anything on Louis's territory. Toxic Hive still needed to depend on Louis, and Olivia was his favorite student. Leia wouldn't be so foolish as to make enemies of Louis. Leia was Louis's important source of data, so Olivia couldn't do anything to her, either. After the transaction was done, Leia looked into Olivia's eyes. I didn't expect you to actually become Louis's student. He hasn't had a student in years. There was a disdainful tone in Leia's voice. Olivia sneered. Neither did I expect you to stand up again after having your 4 limbs broken. It's all thanks to you. As long as you're still alive, I will not let you off the hook. The two stood at the port. Olivia took off the mask she was wearing. Under the mask, her face was still beautiful as always. In the past, she had a delicate beauty, but now, her beauty had a stronger air to it. I won't let you off, Leia. Make sure you stay alive and wait for judgment. Leia sneered. As to you, to be honest, I'm quite curious. If the same thing happens again, will your brother choose me or you? Olivia touched her wrist where it had been injured before. I'd love to let you have a taste of the pain I experienced in the past. We have all the time in the world. Turning around, Leia got onto the deck. The night breeze ruffled their long hair. They should have been a family. Olivia would take pity on Leia and treat her nicely, but Leia destroyed all that. Now, they could be nothing but mortal enemies. Leia, have you regretted it before? Regret. Ethan's face popped up in Leia's mind. He was her brother, who cared about her a lot. Never. With her back to Olivia, Leia slowly walked forward. She never turned back. It was just like the path she had taken. She had lost the chance to turn back a long time ago. It didn't matter what trials or perils lay before her. She had no choice but to go on. Olivia tucked away the strands of hair near her face. Soon, she would be able to conclude her conflict with Leia. In the next few days, Olivia was quite busy on the island. Louis had given her almost complete control. The human modification plans were still being prepared, so Olivia had some time for a break. She would meet Avery every day, and most of the time, Avery would stare at her face with a dazed look on his face. When Olivia turned to look at him, he would avert his gaze. Is something the matter, Mr. Avery? Avery shook his head. It's nothing. I just feel like you resemble my sister a little. I'm reminded of her every time I look at you. When Olivia thought of the young lady of the Fordham family, who had passed away in her youth, she felt sympathetic. Did you figure out who killed her back then? That beast was arrested and received due punishment, but my dear sister is never coming back. Mr. Avery. Olivia was about to say something to comfort Avery when Avery's phone rang. Glancing at the contact's name, Avery spoke in a gentler voice, Jacqueline. Avery, where are you? I haven't seen you in forever, and I'm worried about you. I want to meet you. I just wanted to roam around and see more of the world while I'm still alive. Don't worry, people are fated to walk their separate paths. Life and death are part of nature, after all. Avery, I miss you. Chapter 1427. Avery spoke some words of comfort before ending the call. Olivia felt that something was off. Mr. Avery, why didn't you mention that you're getting treatment? Avery said slowly, someone wants to kill me. He spoke indifferently, but his words shocked Olivia. You're suspecting that the Fordhams are behind it. I don't want to assume such things about my family, but there's something odd about my illness. For years, he didn't doubt his own family. At first, he only needed to find a suitable kidney to cure his illness. But oddly enough, he never managed to find one. Later on, he finally managed to find other sources via alternate routes. However, all of the donors would pass away in various accidents, hence delaying his surgery. If it only happened once or twice, it might have been a coincidence. But later on, things had gotten so outrageous that Avery finally felt that something was off. He had carried out investigations in secret for a long time. His enemy hid their traces very well, and he only managed to nab a few scapegoats. Avery was sure that the person must be hiding in the Fordham residence. Later on, he left his house on his own. He didn't even tell his siblings about it. As expected, things had gotten much more peaceful for him in the past 6 months. Even though his kidney illness wouldn't be cured too soon, it was at least much better than it had been 6 months ago. Avery didn't know who it was who wanted to kill him. For the sake of himself and his family, he was very careful about it. From time to time, he would post photos of beautiful scenery around the world. He did it on purpose so that his enemy would think that he was still traveling around the globe. The enemy was probably waiting for him to meet his end. Olivia had accidentally learned of a huge secret, so she felt a little embarrassed. Avery smiled. "I trust that you're not behind this. We have both suffered a lot. Sadly, I realized it too late. If not, Sean wouldn't have gotten his legs broken." Olivia had heard before that Sean Fordham, the third child of the family, had gotten into an accident. Back then, the Fordham family was way above her, so she wasn't too concerned about them. But now, she was no longer the helpless person she once was. "How are his legs now? I learned a lot from my teacher, and I may have a way to get him to walk again." Marina was the best example of her capabilities. "Really? Yes. You've seen how capable my teacher is. He could even heal someone who had all 4 limbs broken. The worst case scenario would be getting prosthetics. My teacher has already made the best prosthetics in the world, and no one can tell that they're prosthetics at first glance." Avery had talked to Lewis before, and he knew that Olivia wasn't exaggerating. Sean has been upset ever since the incident, and he had stopped smiling because of his legs. "Olivia, if you can cure him, my family will be forever in your debt." Olivia nodded. "I'll discuss this with Mr. Rivera. The human modification project won't be starting for now. I can go to Zealotria in person and have a look at Mr. Sean." "Olivia, I'm relieved to hear that. Now that her identity was exposed, it would be a piece of cake for Lewis to locate her. In simpler terms, she wouldn't be able to escape from him. But before the project, she was still a free person. This period also served as buffer time for Olivia. What about you, Mr. Avery? I'm sure that you'll recover." On the day of Olivia's departure, Avery made sure to see her off. The ocean breeze blew past, and Avery coughed as he handed her a ring. The original intention of Peace's embrace was to ensure world peace, so it was in line with Olivia's thoughts. She accepted the ring. "Mr. Avery, I'll do everything in my power to achieve your dreams. Take care. If you need anything in the future, you can contact me." Chapter 1428. Olivia left on a ship. At the very least, she was calm at that moment. No one could say for sure what would happen in the future. She only had one thought in her mind. She was going home. Her children must have waited for her for a long time. It was snowing heavily in Aldenvine. Ethan had brought the children home. Out of his selfishness, Ethan didn't bring them to the Heath residence to be acknowledged as part of the family. Judging by Mason's personality, he would definitely get the children to stay. It was tough enough for Ethan not to see his wife. He didn't want to be kept away from his kids, either. Ethan brought the children back to the house he and Olivia lived in when they were just married. It was a home that held many unhappy memories for Olivia, but it was also the place where their dreams began. The wedding photo, which Olivia had cut into pieces back then, was hung back in its spot on the wall. Ethan especially took the day off and spent every day with the kids. He wanted to make up for the lack of fatherly love in the past. The children were very independent, and there was almost nothing he could be too worried about. He would drive and take the children along for grocery shopping. When their family of 4 appeared in the supermarket, they always attracted attention. He was holding Willow in his arms while Alicia sat in the cart with Zach pushing the cart along. All 4 of them had amazing looks, especially Willow, whose emerald eyes made her look like an angel. "Daddy, I want chocolate and chips." Zach smiled sweetly. Alicia reminded him, "Mommy said that we shouldn't eat junk food." "She's not around, so I'm in charge of keeping you in check." Ethan was used to the twins arguing with each other. He grabbed a bag of chips and placed it in the cart. "It's okay if you eat some from time to time. Daddy gave me permission." Zach looked gleeful. Ethan caressed Willow's head gently. "What do you like to eat, Willow?" Willow pointed at the section where imported fruits were displayed. With Willow in his arms, Ethan walked over to the fruit section. "You like fruits, huh? No wonder you look so pretty." Soon, the cart was filled with items. Looking at the mountain of snacks, Zach stopped smiling. "I wish Mommy were back. I miss her." In the past few days, Olivia would occasionally contact Ethan. She was in a safe place, but she didn't know when she could go home. Of course, Ethan missed her, too. "It's okay, Mommy will be back soon. What would you guys like to eat?" "I'll cook. Mommy said that you make delicious chicken soup, Daddy." "I'll make some soup, then." "I want fries." "I'll make some too." "I also want." "Sure, anything you want." Kevin and Brent, who were following the family from a distance, couldn't help but feel touched when they saw the family's interactions. Ethan had waited for this day for a whole decade. The days he and Olivia had missed out on were compensated for today. Kelvin and Brent once thought that if things never changed, Ethan would go crazy sooner or later. But the appearance of Olivia and the children was slowly healing him. It was almost evening, and snow danced about under the streetlights. Ethan wrapped Willow up in his coat. The other two children grabbed onto his pockets as they walked toward the car. Zach was still chattering on. "I built a huge snowman. If Mommy sees it, she'll definitely praise me." A gentle voice laughed and said, "But of course. My darling son is the best." Ethan and the children froze. Olivia slowly walked out from behind the car. She had probably been standing there for a while now, for her hair and clothes were covered in snow. Her smile was warm as she extended her arms. "Darlings, I'm back." Chapter 1429. Ethan and the children were stunned when they saw Olivia appearing out of nowhere. There were no signs of her return at all, and even Ethan had no idea when she had entered the country. It wasn't Olivia's fault for hiding it on purpose. After all, Leia had already learned of her whereabouts. If she wasn't careful, she might get intercepted. She kept her journey an absolute secret, and she had come back quietly. Zach and Alicia rushed up to her. "Mommy." Olivia held the children in her embrace. She hadn't seen them for a semester, and they had grown a lot taller. The sound of bells rang in Ethan's ear as Willow struggled out of his arms. She ran straight to Olivia. She couldn't speak, so she could only express her longing by ringing the bells. Ethan had dreamed of this scene many times. But now, with both the children and Olivia around, he felt that this reality was much more wonderful than any dream he could have had. "Liv." Ethan stood still in front of her, examining her in detail to see if she had lost weight. Olivia got up and hugged him. "I'm back." When she said that, it was as if she had returned to the family. It was a very touching scene to behold. "Oh, it's so heartwarming." Kelvin wiped his tears. "Even now, I can remember when Mrs. Miller fell into the sea. It has been so many years since then." Brent sighed as well. He looked at the snowflakes falling from the sky. The snow was about as heavy as this back then. The family of four had finally reunited. On the way back home, the children skipped and jumped in excitement. They were as happy as a lark. "Mommy, Daddy said that he'll make soup for us tonight." "That's great." Olivia was holding the twins' hands while Ethan carried Willow in his arms. They formed quite a blissful scene. Many snowmen were sitting in the yard. There were two larger snowmen with four smaller ones around them. The tallest one was Connor, the eldest brother of the children. It was warm indoors, and the children played with each other. Ethan took off his coat and unbuttoned his shirt collar. Then, he unbuttoned his sleeves and rolled them up to his elbow. He grabbed an apron and put it on. After that, he went into the kitchen with the groceries. Olivia went in after him. Leaning lazily against the doorframe, she said, "I heard that you've been keeping them company for the past few days, and you personally made all their meals." "Yes, they missed you a lot." Ethan took the fish from the bag and washed it. He was just doing trivial stuff, but he looked extra charming when he did that. Olivia wrapped her arms around his broad waist from behind. Then, she leaned her face against his tense back. What about you? Did you miss me? Liv, I miss you even in my dreams. What does that tell you? Olivia rubbed against him gently. She could feel his warmth spreading to her face. I met someone at Lewis's place this time. Avery. When Ethan mentioned the name, he sounded a little upset. Olivia didn't realize that Ethan was getting a little jealous. She just shook her head. No, it was your dear sister, Leia. What? That's impossible. I've grounded her at the Miller residence. He didn't seem to have faked it. By the looks of it, Leia had indeed snuck out. Olivia stopped him. It's not urgent. The children are hungry. Chapter 1430. Ethan noticed that Olivia had calmed down a lot. He would never forget the intense scene back then when Olivia wanted to perish together with Leia. All right. Now, he couldn't quite understand Olivia. He didn't know what she was thinking. Ethan skillfully cleaned the fish. He was thinking about the matter with Leia, so he was a little distracted. Hence, he accidentally poked his hand with a fish bone. He didn't say anything. Instead, he frowned as he continued washing his hands. Let me do it. You look quite distracted. Ethan hadn't met his sister in a long time. In reality, even if he spent every day with Leia, there were too many grudges between them. They couldn't return to what they once were in the past. No matter how he interrogated her, Leia never revealed anything useful. She was his sister, after all. He couldn't possibly kill Leia for real. Janice felt guilty about her daughter, so she had been taking care of Leia all these years. If Janice had covered up for Leia on purpose, Leia could very well have hidden the truth. Sorry. Ethan hastily left the kitchen and dialed that person's number. Janice sounded a little lazy. What is it? Ever since she recovered her wits, she spent every day listlessly lazing about. She was no longer crazy about that man. Where's Leia? She went to sleep, Janice replied quickly. In the past, every time Ethan asked about Leia, Janice would immediately give him an answer. He should have suspected something earlier. Mom, are you going to lie to me forever? Janice straightened herself. She didn't have to pretend anymore. You knew. Ethan had a dark look on his face. Do you remember your promise to me? Ethan, she's my daughter. He closed his eyes. I'm your son, and Liv is your daughter-in-law. Mom, how could you? Ethan tasted something sour in his throat. In the past, he had forced Olivia on the path of no return because of his sister. After so many years, he had finally reaped the bitter fruit he sowed. Do you know how long I had to take to win Liv's trust again? Do you know how much effort I spent on it? What will she think of me? Why are you forcing your misfortune on us? Janice sighed. Ethan, my greatest wish right now is for you and Leia to be happy. You're both dear to me. But I already owe her so much. So you're selling off my happiness just to make up for your regrets. After the call ended, Ethan leaned against the wall and lit a cigarette. The sky had completely turned dark by then. He had no idea what Olivia would think of him. He let out a misty breath, which floated in the cold air. He had painstakingly obtained this shard of happiness. Was it going to be ruined by someone else again? It's so cold outside. Why didn't you come in? Olivia's gentle voice sounded. At a glance, she spotted the man who was leaning against the wall and smoking. There was a layer of snow covering him, and his face was surrounded by smoke. He looked extra sad and sullen. Ethan hastily put out the cigarette. But Olivia simply took a step forward and embraced him. I know what you're thinking. I trust you.